Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Journey Latin America's virtual travel club. Tonight we're heading to Andean Ecuador and the magnificent Galapagos Islands. For a relatively small country, Ecuador certainly packs a huge punch. Where else can you wake up in the Amazon, have lunch in the Andes, and enjoy a cocktail at sunset overlooking the Pacific Ocean? Tonight, I'm delighted to introduce Ben Line, Head of Sales, who will be leading the talk to this wonderful destination. And I'm also delighted to introduce Lena Fuller, one of our knowledgeable travel experts, who will be joining our panel for the Q&A session at the end. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please do use the Q&A function, and we'll be delighted to answer those as we go along. But without further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Ben.
Hi, thanks, Laura, and thank you everyone for logging in to listen about Ecuador and Galapagos. I have quite a lot to get through, so I'm going to run through the slides relatively quickly. But if you have any questions, please do send them to Laura, and she will be happy to answer. So quickly, a little bit about me. I graduated in Spanish and Latin American studies and joined the company not far off 20 years ago. I visited the Galapagos 3 times, which has been absolutely amazing. And just a quick tip for visiting the Galapagos is snorkeling is an amazing part of any trip to the Galapagos. So do take your own snorkel and mask, and that way you can really guarantee the very best fit. About Journey Latin America, we were founded 41 years ago and acknowledged within the industry as the travel experts on Latin America. We offer tailor-made holidays and small group tours to the whole region, as well as Antarctica. We've won quite a few awards, the most recent of the best tour operator to Central and South America at the BTA British Travel Awards that we're very proud of, that we won in the last edition and the one before that. And the service that we provide, both through our travel experts and through our ground operators, has earned us the Platinum Trusted Service Award with FIFA, and that really reflects the fact that we are very much a service-orientated company with friendly travel experts, all of whom have lived or worked or studied or sometimes all of those things in Latin America. So everyone that comes to us has already traveled a great deal in the region, and then they continue traveling with us. So I mentioned we offer tailor-made holidays. In this presentation, I'll have a couple of slides of hotels, but they're really just to give a flavor of the range. So the range from the ranges from mid-range hotels, the equivalent of a 3-star by European standards, right up to the top end. So just bear in mind that I'm giving it just to give a flavor, but there's a great deal we can offer throughout Ecuador and Galapagos. On the whole, we tend to do cultural holidays, but of course, wildlife focus as well, soft adventure, and we cater to pretty much everyone really, families, couples. Families, couples, and singles probably make up the majority of what we do, but a lot of honeymooners as well. And on the tailor-made side, we organize private itineraries where really no itinerary is the same. So we have a broad range of sample itineraries in our brochures and on our website, and they're great as they are. But very often we will tweak them to fit in with whatever your preferences are. If you have a birthday on day 5 of your holiday, we'd sort of work it around, switch it to make sure you can be where you want to be, that kind of thing. And small group tours, we have a brochure that is literally just about to come out, so keep your eyes out for the newsletter announcing that. But all our tours are fully escorted by Journey Latin America tour operators, Journey Latin America tour leaders, and we offer a great deal of flexibility on those tours for an escorted tour. And the team will be very happy to take you through any of the options. As far as Ecuador and Galapagos go, we have 3 group tours specifically for those destinations. So we also have a Galapagos brochure, which is well worth having a look at. You can download it as a PDF online, or you can order a hard copy. But if you want to visit the Galapagos, this is a really useful and inspiring brochure. It's not a catalogue of hotels and cruises and so on. It's more aided as designed as something to aid you plan your trip, and really sort of see what the options are. So Ecuador and Galapagos as a destination is absolutely amazing. Of course, I would say that. I work at Journey Latin America and I'm doing a webinar on it, but I really can't stress how amazingly varied the destination is. I've been to Ecuador many times, probably 6-7 times, and to the Galapagos 3 times, and I still get excited going back, and I still see new things when I go back. So we'll cover the the kind of highlights that are available, but these photos just give you a bit of an idea. So stunning colonial cities and volcanoes, lots of indigenous culture, the Galapagos Islands themselves, of course, and lots of soft adventure opportunities as well. So soft adventure could be horse riding day hikes, or multi-day treks, and river rafting. In terms of ruins, or Inca ruins, obviously the Incas used to rule the land as such, and there is one great site called Inga Pirca, but it's not a country to compare with Peru in terms of archaeological sites, but we'll come on to that. It's a very family-friendly destination, and indeed it's a very popular destination for families. And I think the main draw is the fact that it's really, it's a combination of 2 things. It's a safe country to visit, and it's obviously offers some wonderful educational experiences, particularly in the Galapagos and in the Amazon or in the cloud forest. Kids have on the whole, absolutely love wildlife, and in Galapagos in particular, they can just get incredibly close. As you can see the picture of me and my colleague Sophie there, just sitting behind a giant tortoise. That's typical of the experience in Galapagos. You're so close to absolutely everything. And there's also a good range of accommodation to suit. So coming onto a video, this will just give you a quick overview of some imagery of the main highlights. Great. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. As I said, a real variety of experiences to be had. So just giving a couple of fun facts about Ecuador, useful as well. I think it's one of the top 10 mega diverse countries in the world, and that's impressive, obviously, in that rating. The bird life, the mammal life, the reptile life, insect life, vascular plant life is absolutely mind-blowing. So you can see there that they have 1,655 bird species, 18% of the world's species, and that really is a good indicator as to how fantastic the wildlife experience is in the country. Interesting. The only place on the equator where you'll find snow at the top of Mount Cayambe, one of the volcanoes. Um, and this is highly debated. The highest mountain in the country is Mount Chimborazo volcano at 6,300 meters above sea level, and it is the closest point on Earth to space due to the bulge. Of course, the Earth is not perfectly round. I said it is hotly debated, but I felt confident enough to put it in there. The Panama hat is Ecuadorian. It was actually exported to Panama from Ecuador when the Panamanians building the canal and various immigrants discovered it was ideal for that. And as diverse as the country is in terms of wildlife and scenery, it is also culturally. So 24 recognized languages, that includes 8 different versions of Quechua, the language of the Incas. And then finally, Galapagos was the first UNESCO World Heritage Site, and Quito the second out of all the World Heritage Sites. So they have the fame of being number 1, number 2 on the UNESCO World Heritage Site list. So how do you get there? So unfortunately, there are no direct flights to Ecuador, but it is still pretty straightforward to get there. Iberia tends to be the most typically recommended and requested because it's a 14-hour journey time with a change in Madrid. So that is, along with KLM, the quickest way of getting there. I think Iberia is probably the most popular because it's a daytime flight and they have brand new planes as well. So the onboard service and experience is really good. Not the Iberia of old days that some of you may know about, which didn't have a great reputation, but a solid airline. So there are also other opportunities if you're coming regionally, not from London, then KLM are probably your best option via Amsterdam. And Avianca, the Colombian airline via Bogota, is for those that prefer to fly overnight or might be combining a trip to Ecuador with Colombia or indeed, Peru or any of the other countries that Avianca fly to. So you can see there that I've described how to get there from the UK. But there are good regional connections from Peru, which is frequently combined with a trip to Ecuador, as well as from Colombia, as I mentioned. There is a land border crossing with both Colombia and Peru. The Colombia one is rarely used. There's no real need to because there are no attractions in that part of Colombia for our clients. The Peru one we use a little bit, but on the whole, I would say most people tend to fly between the countries. And in terms of how to get around the country, on the whole, it's by road. I did a presentation 2 weeks ago talking about Costa Rica and self-drive itineraries and private transfers, and explained that on the whole, most transfers tend to be less than 2 hours or less, with very few 5-hour transfers. Ecuador is a much larger country, so most transfers between one destination and another will probably be 2 hours. And then between some of the longest points that you would drive during a day, it might be as much as 7 hours. But of course, we plan itineraries so that if you are doing a long journey, then we always organize it so that there are stops and places of interest en route. Flying internally is primarily just to get from the mainland and between the mainland and Galapagos, although there are also internal flights between some of the main cities. But on the whole, going through the Andes is one of the highlights of the destination, mainland Ecuador. So we tend not to recommend flying much internally. Of course, the Amazon you can get to both overland and by plane, so it depends a little bit on where you're going exactly. I've got a picture of a lovely old steam train that is chuffing through the Avenue of the Volcanoes. It's currently suspended, so but I thought I'd just put it there should there be any train journey enthusiasts listening, because whilst the service is suspended, when I say the service, there's a company called Tren Ecuador who put together a number of multi-day rail journey itineraries. whilst it's suspended because of COVID, one would hope that that it will come back at some point. So where am I going to talk about today? So broadly speaking, I'm going to talk about the Andes, and that is covering Quito, the capital, and then Otavalo, which is an indigenous market town north of Quito. And then I'll also cover the Avenue of the Volcanoes, which is the route going from Quito southwards to Cuenca, which is all highland Andes scenery and experiences. I'll also talk about Mindo, which is cloud forest, and the Amazon, which of course is rainforest, and also the Galapagos, which is probably what Ecuador is most famous for. So those are the places I'm going to talk about, a lot to fit into the time we have allocated. But I did just want to mention that there's even more to Ecuador, but we just don't have enough time for it today. So you can see that there are a number of different arrows pointing to the Pacific coast, which is not classic beach destination, but it does have some beautiful beaches. Tends to be more popular with the local market and traditionally with backpackers, but increasingly there are better options for people looking for a bit better level of comfort than backpacker hostels, and I've been there and it really is stunning. There's also an island which is known as Poor Man's Galapagos because it's easier to get to, but really rich in wildlife with lots of similar species that you can find on the Galapagos Islands. And then up in the north, you can see the picture of Piman, very different landscapes of those we'll see on the presentation, or the webinar as I continue. I've put a picture of Guayaquil in there. You can see it's a very modern looking city. It's not so much of interest in itself. It's okay for a day, but outside of Guayaquil, there are some great things to do, and some good sort of farmland community experiences to be had as well. And so I put a picture there just to give an idea and remind me to talk about that. And Baños, which is included on lots of our itineraries, but I just figured we wouldn't have time to talk about it. But Baños is a lovely spa town at the foot of a huge volcano, and there's an area known for amazing waterfalls and a road that descends from high up in the Andes all the way down to the jungle eventually. When to visit Ecuador? Well, the answer to that really depends a little bit on what you want to do. So why you're headed to Ecuador? Is it just to see the mainland, or are you looking to go to the Galapagos? Are you planning to combine the Galapagos with the mainland? And what sort of activities have you got in mind? You're looking to go on a cultural holiday, a wildlife holiday, or perhaps hiking or trekking even. So all those things will really alter the answer to when is best to go, because the climatic regions or the different regions vary climatically a great deal. Another important factor to consider is, are you planning to combine your visit to Ecuador and or the Galapagos with any other of the neighboring countries in Latin America? Because of course you would want to get the timing right so that it's a good time for Ecuador Galapagos areas as well as wherever else in Latin America you may be going. So there's a lot to consider there, and that's where our expertise really comes in. So although I'm going to cover the when to go and so on, just bear in mind that when we talk to our clients and help design itineraries or offer suggested group tours, we will always take these factors into account and discuss them with you. So I'm starting off with the Galapagos. So it's a year-round destination, and that really is because the wildlife is there permanently, and there's always some wildlife activity, special activity taking place in any month of the year. So it really is a year-round destination. Broadly speaking, you can split it between December and May, which is the hot wet season, and June and November, which is the cooler dry season. When I say cool, I mean it never gets cold in the Galapagos. You're on the equator and you're at sea level, so it's still hot. But the December to May period gets very hot. typically with temperatures around 30 degrees C and a very strong sun. So yeah, December to May, as you can see, you'd expect clear skies, despite it being the wet season. There's actually very little rain. The rain tends to be confined to the high points, the highlands, the green lush highlands at the top of the volcanoes. So on the whole, you've got beautifully clear skies, and very hot, and the islands, particularly towards the end of the rainy season, or the wet season, are really beautifully lush and green. For those who want to go snorkeling but want the warmer sea temperatures, then this is also the time to go, and visibility is also at its best during that period. So you might think, oh well, that all sounds great, why would I not just travel between December and May? But the answer is it really depends on you. So I've been throughout both seasons, and I actually preferred, for me, I found it more comfortable when I went in September, because I found it more comfortable. There was more cloud cover, so the sun wasn't quite as strong, and and I found that more comfortable. When I say cloud cover, it tends to be a haze rather than sort of cloudy, and yeah, it offers a bit of protection, and it's just a bit cooler and more comfortable. But the other reason I particularly like that time is I love snorkeling, and although snorkeling at any time of the year is amazing, during that dry season, that's when the cold ocean currents bring with them the plankton bloom, and of course plankton brings the highest, the largest species, and a huge sort of burst in underwater activity. So the other consideration perhaps is what are the seas doing? So if you're traveling on a boat, although the Galapagos is always pretty sheltered sailing and relatively calm, it does get a little bit choppier between June and November. So I'll come on to that, but if you're looking to go on a boat but you're a bit nervous about the swell, then that's another factor to consider. You might be better off either on a larger boat that's more stable, or you might be better off traveling during a dry season, which is when the waters are at their calmest. So I'm going to whip through this, but this was really just to give an indication of temperatures. So you can see that maximum temperatures are at their highest in March, but when they're at their lowest in August, September, we're still talking sort of average 24 degrees C, which is pretty good. And I also mentioned that there's always some activity taking place. So the green represents what is happening in which month. So you can see the first sort of 5 top lines: flightless cormorants and penguin breeding seasons, flamingo breeding seasons, red-footed boobies and masked boobies. They're breeding sort of throughout the year. It depends on their sort of availability of their food source, but they do feed throughout the year. If there's something in particular that you wanted to see, so for instance, quite a common one is people who really want to see the waved albatross during their time in the islands, then those sort of factors would come into the time that you travel. So you can see the albatross arrive in April, and they depart in December. So this was to indicate that there's always something going on, but if there is something specific that you want to see, then you will, perhaps it'll be worth having a think about which months might be best. So the Galapagos Islands, of course, a volcanic collection of islands, 14 of them, of which only 4 are inhabited. So 97% of the islands landmass is national park, and I haven't got the population figure here, but it's very small. So because of the lack of the predators, large predators on the islands, the wildlife is abundant and very easy to see and not scared of us, which is great. So that is why you have these incredibly close encounters that we all love, particularly photographers, I would say. And there's a bit of a history to the islands as well. Most people go there, of course, for the wildlife, but historically there's interesting history of pirates, buccaneers, and the early explorers, of course. Darwin's famous theory of evolution. and it was a World War II base at one point. Now, for the last 30 years, it's been a big sort of ecotourism destination, and because of that, it's highly protected. So how long should you stay? You could stay for 3 nights. There are cruises, expedition cruises that do 3 nights, and if you're staying in a hotel, you could do 3 nights. But really, I would say that's too little. It'll only give you a sort of teasing taste. So ideally, I would stay. The ideal I would say is a week, 7 nights, and that's why lots of the cruise lengths are 7 nights. But anywhere between 4 to 14 nights, and that will depend a bit on a number of different factors, including, of course, budget. So there are two different ways of exploring the islands. Expedition cruise is probably, I would say, what historically most people have done. So that's getting on a liverboard, yacht or vessel, sailing around the islands and visiting the islands, as shore excursions. So the advantage of the liverboard expedition cruise experience is that you'll visit more uninhabited islands than if you stay in the lodges, because of course the lodges are on the inhabited islands and there's only so far that you can get on a speedboat. Whilst not taking away from land-based visits, it's true to say that you'll see more uninhabited islands and a greater number of islands on a liverboard cruise, and so because of that you will see a greater variety of species. That said, I've done island hopping, and a week's island hopping, I was equally blown away by the amount I saw. So not to take away from island hopping, but if you want to see as many of the landscapes and islands as possible, then expedition cruise is the best way. It's effortless. You board, check in, and then you don't have to think about packing or unpacking or transferring in between until the final day of the itinerary. And it's also, handy because of the all-inclusive concept. All the excursions, all the guided excursions are all arranged by the guides on board. All the meals are taken care of. So it's easy. There's more choice, I would say, on the sea than land. So this may be a little bit out of date, this figure of 88 liverboards operating the islands. I put that together probably about 2 years ago, and at the time we offered 27. I would say it won't have changed dramatically since then, but that's a lot of choice, both for us to choose the best vessels out of 88 and for you to choose the ones that suit you from the ones that we have narrowed down. So how would you choose which one to go? There's a huge choice. So I would always say have a think about two things. So the size of the ship or the vessel will offer two different things. How intimate the experience is. So the smallest ones are between 12 and 16 passengers. So it's social, you'll get to know everyone, and that can be great or not if you prefer to be a bit more sort of anonymous, in which case you might want to go for a medium-sized ship or a large-sized ship. The one in the bottom right-hand corner is the largest one that we offer, and that has just under 100 passengers in total. So when we're saying large, we're not talking large on the sort of global scale of cruises. It's still a small expedition cruise. And then medium-sized ships, so the one on the bottom left, that one there has, I believe it's about 20 capacity for 20 people. There are also other ones that are more representative of medium, actually, which would be sort of between 30 or 40 passengers. So, of course, there's the question of how social and intimate it is, but it's also how stable the boat is in the water. So the larger the boat, the more stable. The other thing is the larger the boat, the more room there is for additional facilities. So that large boat there has lots of outdoor space for dining, for relaxing, for outdoor jacuzzi, hot tubs, those kind of things. Whereas the one on the top right, which is a beautiful boat, and I would love to go on that. I had a look at it, but I didn't actually sail on it. But of course, space is much more restricted. So there's a dining room, and you all have your cabins, and there's a bit of outside space, but far less. So those, I would say, are the main ways to differentiate between, or to help guide you as to which one you might like the best. Of course, budget will come into it as well. Very generally speaking, the medium to large sizes tend to be more at the luxury end, and then the smaller boats tend to have a greater range of, very luxurious to well, I wouldn't say budget, because the Galapagos, really, you wouldn't want to go on a budget boat, but less expensive. And finally, the other thing is different boats do different itineraries and offer different lengths of cruise, so that may also affect which one you might want to choose. So I just tried to give an idea of what a typical day on a cruise looks like. So it's a cruise, but it's all about what you're doing and seeing. So completely forget any potential preconceptions about, dinners with the captain or bingo or anything like that. This is all about the wildlife. So you get up early and have breakfast, and then straight off for a shore visit. And a shore visit really is just landing on the islands with your guide and seeing what that island has to offer. And snorkeling, I mentioned earlier, is a fantastic part of the experience. So even, I've been lots of times and I've seen people who are a bit nervous about it, who have never snorkeled before, and a huge number of those people have taken the plunge and absolutely loved it. However, if it's not your thing, then whilst other people are snorkeling, you would usually be on a zodiac ride, to spot other sort of wildlife, or potentially just relaxing on a beach. I say relaxing, you may be on the beach looking for turtles or sea lions and so on. So then after that, it's a lunch, and then in the afternoon, on the whole, that's when people are free to relax a bit. It's during the heat of the day, so that's when most of the sort of transfers between islands will be done. And then, generally speaking, once the heat has died down, there's an afternoon shore visit again, with perhaps another opportunity to snorkel or to maybe kayak or go on a zodiac ride. And then in the evening, you'll always have a bit of time to freshen up. Sunset drinks are pretty much de rigueur across the the whole of the Galapagos. And then usually there'll be a briefing or a lecture, perhaps. The lecture might be about I can't say it, volcanoes. Or the wildlife, but on the whole, it'll be about what you're going to see the next day, or what you saw that day as well, in summary. And then overnight, that's when the biggest distances are done. So I just put this slide in just to talk about fitness and mobility, because it's something that we do get asked about. So, how mobile, how fit do you have to be? The answer really is just, as I put it there, you need to be stable on your feet. But you don't have to be sort of, hyper fit and ready to do big arduous hikes. Really, it's just about stability, in order to be able to disembark the boats either via the steps, as you can see on the two pictures of the cruise ships here, or well, I say either by the steps. It's always steps like this, but also to be able to climb out of the Zodiac onto sandy beaches with potentially water up to your knees. Usually it's more sort of ankle depth rather than knees, but so you need a degree of mobility, but yeah, I just wanted to clarify how you'll best enjoy the shore excursions. So the actual Zodiacs themselves, I remember when I first went on one, I was amazed at how stable they are. I was expecting something like the dinghies we used to play on as kids, but yeah, they're hard, and the guides are amazing at constantly helping people get on and off. Even people who are 100% confident, they will always give them this hand grip, just to be absolutely certain. So that's talking about the cruises. I will come on to the actual islands themselves in a second, but the other way to visit that has grown in popularity in recent years is by staying at lodges, and exploring the islands from the lodges. So that's either exploring the islands on which the lodge is, or staying at a lodge and then taking boat trips to the neighboring islets, or maybe even some of the neighboring larger islands. So this is really good for families in particular, because it's more adaptable and more flexible. So and water sports tends to play a big part in this. So when I say water sports, I'm talking about sort of swimming and snorkeling, kayaking, stand-up paddleboarding. There's a bit more, options. There are a few more options for people when you're staying at the lodges, but yeah, it's a very popular with families, also because you can be a bit more exclusive. So, traveling as let's say a family of 4 or a group of friends, 4 or 6 friends, you can have, a guide all to yourselves. Whereas on any of the other cruises, it's usually a guide ratio of between 10 and 16, depending on which boat you're on. Yes, I mentioned it's a little less regimented, but the other thing as well is, you'll get a good night's sleep if seasickness is something you're prone to. So the sailing in the Galapagos, is pretty calm, but you are on a boat. Some people feel unwell just, on a cross-channel ferry, or even on a boat on a lake. So if that's you, then don't feel that you can't visit the Galapagos, because you can visit on a land-based itinerary. So the islands themselves, this slide just shows the sheer variety. The picture in the top right-hand corner was one I took when I did one of the hikes up a volcano on Isabella, and I just couldn't believe that this dry volcanic kind of landscape was preceded by the cloud forest that you can see in in the middle picture, literally changing dramatically within the space of one day hike. Beautiful beaches, the famous beach at Rabida, the Red Beach. The scenery is spectacular, and is as much a draw for me really as the actual wildlife. Although of course the wildlife, I'm probably telling the fib that the wildlife is my main draw, because it's incredible. You just get so close to everything. So this is a mix of my pictures and some from our image library, but you can see that you don't even need a big zoom lens to get this close to all these marine iguanas and the giant tortoises. And even the birds don't fly away. So that owl in the top right hand corner, we waited with the guide for ages for it to get out of the path, and it just wouldn't go. So in the end, the guide just told us to take a wide berth, but basically step over it. It was amazing. I mean, an owl not running away from you is incredible. And you don't have to be a bird watcher to get excited about these things. I mean, the abundance and variety of all the different bird life is amazing. I'm not a bird watcher, but I absolutely love it. The blue-footed booby dance, where they do their mating dance, is really funny and just beautiful to watch. That little yellow bird was just literally at my feet. Usually the smaller birds in this country wouldn't get anywhere near that close to you. And then of course the penguins are great. So not only can you see penguins on land, but you can snorkel with them as well, watch them flitting around, darting around. It's absolutely amazing. So I am going quickly because there's a lot to cover, but I already mentioned the snorkeling and diving. So these aren't my photos. Mine were really rubbish, my underwater pictures, but I have seen all of these things. In fact, I saw all these things on my very first trip to the Galapagos. So just because I've been 3 times, that's not why I've seen them all. I've seen hammerhead sharks up in Tower a couple of times. And sea lions, you'll see them in lots of different places, and big shoals of eagle rays and so on. So it's amazing. It's nothing to be scared about when you are with the guides. Even hammerhead sharks, I was a bit nervous about. They're just simply not interested. Of course, we wouldn't be doing it if there was a genuine risk, and they wouldn't be offered. So that was a quick stop of the Galapagos. So now I'm going to do a quick stop of the Andean Highlands. So, of course, Ecuador's famed for the Galapagos, but the mainland is beautiful and offers a huge number of different attractions. So, when is the best time to go to the mainland? It depends what you're looking to do, but I would say that on the whole, most people would probably aim to travel in the dry season if they're just going to the mainland. So that's May to September. But if they're combining with the Galapagos, then it'll depend a bit on what they're wanting to do in the mainland and where they're wanting to go in the Andes. Of course, the driest month is June and August, which is the best time for hiking. So if you're wanting to do a multi-day hike, then that's certainly something to consider. Are there any months to avoid? Really none, because it rarely rains all day long. Up in the Andes, it's pretty much a spring-like climate throughout the year. So it never gets boiling hot, but rarely gets particularly cold during the day. The nights are chilly, where you'll want a thick jumper, but that's about it. Yes, and I put market days again. So if you're particularly keen on visiting markets, traditional markets, then the different markets operate on different days of the week. So that could also be a consideration. Anyone who travels to Ecuador, even if you're just going to get to the Galapagos as quickly as possible, the vast majority of people will go via Quito and spend a couple of nights in Quito. It's an amazing city high up in the Andes, the world's highest constitutional capital. La Paz in Bolivia isn't the constitutional capital, so that's why Quito gets that title. It's a beautiful city, really nicely restored, a great choice of restaurants, and following Peru, the food and cuisine in Ecuador has really come on a great deal in the last few years, last 10 years, let's say, and is amazing. And so the best restaurants in the country on the whole are in Quito. So I would say usually try and spend 2 or 3 nights in Quito on arrival. Certainly 2 nights in order to see the city, primarily visiting the colonial plazas and beautiful mansions, and the churches. But there are also other things that you can do from Quito. So if you don't, you can also use it as a bit of a base for perhaps 3 or 4 nights and do day trips outside of the city. So these pictures are all of Quito itself, just to try and give a bit of a flavor of the city. So the cathedral, well, it's not a cathedral, sorry, it's church, but I've forgotten the name of it, San Francisco. Inside is amazing because it was built, ordered by the colonial Spanish colonials, but built with the hands of the local indigenous population, and so they put sneaky little images from their sort of traditional beliefs into this Catholic church, and visiting it with the guides where they sort of point out the sun and the moon, all this sort of symbolism that came from before the Spanish conquest is fascinating. It's amazing, and an outrageous amount of gold in there, of course, as you'd expect in a good Latin American Catholic church. So I mentioned day trips that you can do outside of the city. So these pictures are just to represent that. So you can head out north to Otavalo Indigenous Market or Artisan Market, visit some, the lakes. You can do chocolate tasting, which is the top right-hand picture. Visit the Equator, the line on the equator, which is the bottom left-hand picture, the monument there. Kids absolutely love that. The guides really bring that experience alive. Or go to the cloud forest for a day, or on the bottom right is a place called Papayacta, which is a lovely spa. It's a sort of spa town, but there's one lodge in particular that you can either stay at or visit as a day trip that is just amazing for just soaking in natural springs. And there's also cloud forests and hikes and so on in that area. So a great deal that you can do as a day trip from Quito. And where you stay will vary on what you want. So Casa Gangotena, as you can see see in the pictures is very luxurious and very classical. Casona de la Ronda is, is tasteful, characterful, but less sort of exclusive. So that's just to give an idea of the range. So moving on from Quito, about 2 hours north is Otavalo, so it can be visited as a day trip, or probably most people would usually visit there, overnight. So yeah, amazing market. The Saturday produce market is absolutely a local affair and is a photographer's dream. I love just soaking up the atmosphere of these local indigenous markets. It's not really somewhere to buy things so much, well, not the livestock market, but there's also an artisan market that's really famous in Otavalo, and that's pretty much every day. It's at its biggest on a Saturday, but every day, and you can find the incredible weavings and various different artisan products that are made in Ecuador. I would say weaving is the main attraction really on the whole, and learning about the process is incredible, as this slide shows. It's fascinating, all done in a very traditional manner. So outside of Otavalo, it's not just about the market, but you can go horse riding. You can visit the Lake Quicocha, which is stunning, has a really nice outlook. There's Peguche waterfall. You can get an idea from these pictures that there's a great deal to do in the Andes around Otavalo. And again, you can either stay in extreme comfort with amazing service at Hacienda Zuleta, which also produces amazing cheeses that you can learn all about while you're staying there. Or you can stay somewhere, equally sort of traditional. Simon Bolivar actually stayed here and signed some important document before one of the local battles in Ibarra. But now it's, just a lovely sort of historical place to stay. The rooms are much more simple and the service is nothing like Zuleta, but it's great. I stayed here and really like it. So that was Otavalo North. I'm now going to talk about the Avenue of the Volcanoes. I'm going to have to really speed through this, but the Avenue of the Volcanoes is essentially the route that follows the Pan American highway, really, down the spine of the Andes. And on the whole, most people would probably spend 3-4 nights doing it as a bit of a road trip, but bear in mind that there are lots of different ways to do it depending what your interests are. So people who want to do some hiking or trekking will probably stay longer, and if your main interest is the train ride and the city, but less perhaps the indigenous markets, then we would usually tweak it. But I want to give you visually a bit of a feeling for what it looks like. So Cotopaxi National Park is the first, well, it's not the first big volcano, the Avenue of Volcanoes, but it's the perfect sort of cone one that is featured in lots of imagery of Ecuador. And it's a beautiful national park, which is great for hiking, horse riding, bird watching, enjoying the great outdoors. You'll see, local horsemen, so it's got a sort of cultural element. Some people climb to the top of Cotopaxi. We don't really offer the summit because it's not really our market, but you can certainly be driven up to the building there and get up to the snow line, which lots of our clients do. Then a bit further south of Cotopaxi is Kilatoa, which is a huge, great big crater lake, absolutely stunning. Again, you can enjoy these views with as much or as little effort as you want. So you can drive up pretty much close to the rim and just walk the final distance there, or you can do a 2-day hike up there all the way around the crater and back down. And then the local markets. I would say that my favorite local markets on the whole in Ecuador are in this area. So they're much less about, the weavings and the things that you might find. They're much more about sort of just local life, local color, very traditional, and, fascinating. This is just to give an idea of the kind of views that you would see along the avenue of the volcanoes. So you can see those two panoramic shots give you a feeling for it. I put in a couple of pictures of the roses because the rose plantations are something that you can visit en route. Riobamba is where you would stay. It's not particularly interesting in its own right, but being in the Andes, it's still, you know, colourful and culturally interesting. But the main reason to stay in Riobamba is to then head on south to Alausi, this town from which you can board the train that goes down the famous Devil's Nose, and that's a real highlight for you know, for anyone visiting Ecuador. Fantastic scenery and a real engineering feat. So I would say the vast majority of people going through the Avenue of Volcanoes would want to do that. And Inca the you know, the most important Inca site, which is just outside the city of Cuenca. Again, you know, really interesting. You can see similar kind of Inca brickwork to that's found in Peru. If you've been to Peru, then Inca probably wouldn't blow your mind, pleasant and interesting as it is. If you haven't been to Peru, then it will. And then probably the most beautiful colonial city in Ecuador is Cuenca, a great place to learn Spanish, to explore the cafes, explore the streets, real varied architecture throughout the whole city. It's also famous for producing the Panama hat. So if you're in the market for a Panama hat, this is probably the place to buy it. And just outside is Cajas National Park, which is a high altitude park with you know, hundreds of lakes, and you can visit this as a day trip from Cuenca. Lots of orchids, highland sort of bird life as well. Just to give you a feeling for the kind of accommodation. So this is in Cotopaxi National Park itself, lovely cozy lodge with incredible views. And then in the city of Cuenca, temporarily closed at the moment, this hotel, but I'm sure it's going to reopen soon. Yeah, just to give you an idea of the kind of characterful places you can stay in. I think I've got about 10 minutes left. So Mindo cloud forest is very different to the Amazon. So people often wonder whether they should visit the cloud forest or the Amazon or both. And so if you're really interested in wildlife and bird life in particular, the bird life in Mindo is incredible. That's what it's most famous for. So I'm afraid I'm going to skip over the when to visit because otherwise we won't get through this. This whole presentation will be made available online if you want to look back at any of the slides. Yes, as I mentioned, the bird life is absolutely amazing. So I think 600 or just under 600 species of bird have been spotted at one of the lodges here. Lots of hummingbirds, lots of other birds, including the famous cock of the rock, and toucanets and motmots, and yeah, is amazing. And the guides are, of course, brilliant at spotting them for you. The cloud forest isn't just about the birds, though. It's also about the you know, the waterfalls, the amphibians, the reptiles, and yeah, is incredibly biodiverse. So a nature lover's paradise, and you can do it in absolute you know, all-inclusive sort of luxury, staying at Mashpee Lodge, where they have their own sort of infrastructure of canopy zip line, well, not zip lines, but canopy sort of bicycles. I've forgotten what they're called, like in the bottom left. Or you can do it, you know, the sort of much lower price point, but you know, equally beautiful setting in the cloud forest at Bay of Vista Lodge. So the Amazon, again, the Amazon is in Ecuador is you know, is, I would say, slightly different from Peru. I would say there's a bit more of the sort of split between wildlife / bird life and cultural experience. So I mean, that's perhaps a bit of a generalization, but I would say there's a bit more contact with local communities in Ecuadorian Amazon. Most of the lodges or the cruises will go to Yasuni National Park, which, as you can see, is sort of located, you know, towards the border with Colombia. Usually we would fly people into Coca, and then you would board a motorized canoe for 2 or 3 hours down to your lodge, or to board your expedition cruise if you are wanting to go on an expedition cruise. I wouldn't go for less than 3 nights. I would say 3 to 4 nights is about right. And the biodiversity, as I mentioned, is amazing. Again, I'm going to skip through the climate bit here, the when to visit, because we're short on time, but it's hot and humid throughout the year. The main distinction to make is the river levels. So during the wet period, the river level is high. During the dry period, it's low, and that affects where you'll see what wildlife. But of course, it's all highly adapted. All the wildlife are highly adapted to the environment, so you will see a great deal irrespective of which season you travel. If you're particularly interested in birds, or particularly interested in seeing the pink river dolphins or something, then that's where we would guide you as to the best time. But yeah, amazing. 11 species of monkey. So these are the most common ones that you would see: the Saki monkeys, spider monkeys, squirrel monkeys. A huge variety of birds, similar number to Mindo, 600 bird species, and the sounds, even when you're not seeing them, the sound in the Amazon is incredible. And it's not just about the big stuff. The Amazon is amazing for the small sort of surprises. So the strange little insects that have these vibrant colors. These, of course, are not my photos, but they're all from one of the lodges that we use, and all photos that have been seen from the lodge. So and yeah, it's for me, this is a part of visiting the rainforest that I absolutely love, is just the surprises, the strange sort of things, like the bottom left hand photo that, if you look at it closely, it just looks like a twig, but I know it's some weird sort of beast. But yeah, as I mentioned, the cultural exchanges are brilliant in Ecuador, and most of the lodges are either run in conjunction with or by, or at least owned by, local indigenous communities. And so it's a really part of the experience as well. So eating what they traditionally eat, learning about how they cook it. Lots of the the local Waorani, for instance, will still hunt with blowpipes. So learning about how to do that. Kids, of course, love it. And in terms of where to stay, so this lodge is lovely, comfortable, all you need, nothing luxurious, fantastic wildlife experience and feeling of being remote in the Amazon. Or if you prefer the idea of just being slightly sort of closed off from the forest, slightly safer from the forest, if you like, not that it's dangerous, but you might feel that, then an expedition cruise might be more your thing. So in terms of, I've really rushed through that, but in terms of common combinations, Ecuador is frequently combined with Peru, and particularly the Galapagos, I would say, because the Galapagos really is unique. So that's very easy to organize, and although distances are large, by the time you fly, it's it's not particularly particularly difficult. Colombia, of course, neighboring country, is an incredible coffee country, but wonderful people, really friendly people, and very diverse country in its own right. So I would say that that provides a good contrasting experiences in some areas to Ecuador as well. Chile and Panama, again, because there are direct flights, so very easy to combine. I'm sorry if you've already had to listen to this from my previous one, but traveling with us, we are fully financially, your bookings would be fully financially protected via our bonding. So you're traveling with a solid and reputable tour operator. We currently have a flexible booking policy, so we're aware that at the moment there's lots of uncertainty. So that booking policy is really sort of unprecedented flexibility to recognize the fact that none of us quite know when we're going to be able to travel, hopefully soon. And we use great local partners as well, and have done for the 40 years we've been in business. Then lastly, I'm just going to tell you about a travel app that we have. So this is just a video.
Journey Latin America's travel app makes travel easy. It's simple to use, saves time, and provides you with all your important travel information and local contact numbers in one place, both on and offline. So now you can let the excitement build as you count down the days to your holiday and have a last-minute check on the weather to see what to pack. Scroll through your day-by-day itinerary to see what exciting places and activities are in store, and share your login with friends and family so they can keep track of your trip. Stay one step ahead at the airport with live flight info, schedule changes, and boarding notifications straight to your smartphone or tablet device. On arrival, browse the list of recommendations and begin exploring the restaurants, museums, cafes, bars, and places of interest that come personally recommended by Journey Latin America's clients. Don't worry about getting lost on the way there, as you'll have access to offline maps so you can navigate the streets just like a local. After seeing the sights, make trip notes and share all your memories with friends and family using our digital diary. The Journey Latin America Travel app. Travel made easy.
Great. Thank you very much for listening. And sorry that was so rushed towards the end. I think I tried to squeeze a bit too much in.
That was fantastic, Ben. That was brilliant. Thank you so much for giving such a detailed overview of the Galapagos Islands and Ecuador. Just before we go over to the Q&A, it's amazing you've been to Ecuador and the Galapagos so many times. What great experiences you've had. Is there one experience or one highlight that you remember the most from all your trips there?
Very difficult to single it down to a single one. I mean, I think one thing that really two that stay very special. First, when I first snorkeled with hammerhead sharks was just incredible. But I think probably the most magical was when I was visiting Floriana, and there's a beautiful beach and sort of little inlet there, you know, we were just snorkeling freely on an island hopping sort of package. So we had as long as we wanted, just snorkeling freely with turtles and sea lions. And as the sun was coming down, it was magical, amazing.
Well, it sounds amazing. Thank you, Ben. So we've managed to answer most of the questions. I know that we have to wrap up quite soon, but there is one question that we've got still pending, and that's on self-drive. How safe is it for solo travelers? I think we've got Lena as well live. So Lena, if you want to chip in, please do.
Yeah, I'll let Lena. Yeah, go on, Lena.
Hello. Hello, everyone. And thank you, Ben, for this amazing presentation, by the way. I think that the solo drive, it depends on yourself. If you feel confident to drive and be by yourself, that's perfectly fine. One important thing is that when we do the self-drive package, we include as well excursions within the self-drive. So, for example, when you are in the cloud forest, you're going to have a guide with you that will take you for half a day to see the national park, or when you are in the rainforest or in Cotopaxi. So you are not by yourself all the time. So yes, I think that is perfectly fine to be solo on a self-drive package.
And actually, I'm just going to add one thing, Lena, which is the quality of the roads in Ecuador is incredibly good. Actually, I had meant to put some pictures in to show that, but the roads are very high quality, so driving is really quite easy there.
That's great. Thank you, Ben. We've got a question about the train from Quito to the coast. You mentioned it a little bit about the Tren Crucero, the Avenue of the Volcanoes trip, and that it was suspended. Is there a current option to go down to the coast, or is it completely suspended?
No, it is suspended at the moment, so you can still do in fact, sorry, I'll let Lena will know more about that than me, actually.
I did the train of a couple of years ago when I took the train of Ecuador, but I did it in small stages. At one point, you could do the whole thing in one go. But for example, I took the train between Quito and Cotopaxi, and just outside Cotopaxi, and then as well between Guayaquil and Duran. So I did a couple of train journeys that perhaps it is possible to do, but maybe not the whole thing in one go. So that's something that we need to check as well. The Devil's Nose train is the famous one. So I believe that for sure will be running. Oh no, Ben. So.
Yeah, that's definitely scheduled to run. The Tren Crucero sort of trips that went all the way to the north and around it is suspended, and we don't know when that'll go. But I think, like Lena says, it's more than likely that elements of elements of the train journeys that used to be available will be available individually. So, for instance, from Guayaquil to Duran from Duran to inland to Bucay. Yes, so short answer is we don't know yet, but I would be very surprised if none of the individual journeys come back.
Great, thank you, Ben. Do we know about the vaccination situation in Ecuador at the moment? I believe they've started to roll out the vaccination, and that's underway. Do you have any information on the current situation?
Yeah, not particularly up to date information to my hands, but we're following it closely. Our product team in particular. So I can get back with we can get back with more specifics on that. I think the vaccination program has started, but I'm not sure.
It's early days yet.
Yeah, it's early days. Yeah, I mean Ecuador has actually managed it relatively well. I say relatively well. I think there are a few countries in the whole world where life has been normal, but certainly they've got a entry policy at the moment whereby you either need to do a PCR test or show that you've had your vaccine for entry to the country, and then the same again for Galapagos. But we're not focusing on it all too much at the moment, because it is very possible that it's going to change with time, both so really I think the first stage is once we know when Ecuador will reopen, then we'll be able to provide accurate, sort of up-to-date information on what entry requirements are.
That's brilliant. Thank you ever so much, Ben. Any tips on luggage for a land tour of Galapagos?
Lena, do you have any tips?
No, if it's a land tour, you can take all the luggage that your plane will allow you. So because even when you are crossing on boats between islands, you can still take a suitcase with you. So it's no restriction on in the land base, no restriction at all on that. On flights, you have to be careful, because you might be allowed only 20 kilos baggage allowance. So perhaps that is the recommended amount to take.
That's great. Thank you, Lena. Thank you so much, Ben. And thank you for everybody for joining us this evening. We really hope you've enjoyed this session, and we very much look forward to welcoming you at our next Virtual Travel Club event on Tuesday, the 13th of April, which we didn't actually know this, but it's timed quite well after the government's next announcement on the 12th of April. So hopefully we'll have a bit more of an indication of when we can travel again. Okay, thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Yeah, thank you, Laura. Thank you, Lena, and thank you everyone for.
Thank you.
Listening.